many games will the Dallas Cowboys win in 2025? Welcome, Cowboys fans, to your official schedule preview and record prediction for America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, in 2025. In this video, my picks and my analysis for every game on the Cowboys schedule. If that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button. Your likes help this video find the rest of the Cowboys fans lurking around on YouTube. So Jason Witten, spike that like button and let me know in the comments, how many games will your Cowboys win this year? Let's check out the schedule and dive into it. So the Dallas Cowboys begin the season, of course, in prime time. The Cowboys, once again, play a ton of primetime games. I think 6 is the exact number this season. And it starts off in week 1 at the Philadelphia Eagles. The Cowboys were last in an opener, if I'm not mistaken, against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a few years back. In that game, they lost. They made it competitive. They made it fun. They made it close, even closer than expected. I kind of feel like a similar thing will happen in this game. I think the Cowboys entering the season are a bit underrated. I think they're a bit underrated. And that's because they are very good in the passing game. On paper, the Cowboys have a good quarterback in Dak Prescott. They have a young but promising offensive line that is better as pass blockers than run blockers, in my opinion. They have George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, Ferguson at tight end, and they have a great pass rush coupled by a pretty interesting secondary if they're all healthy. So I look at Dallas and I could see certain matchups on this schedule that will very much favor them. In any game they play where they can torch you through the passing game and they can rush your quarterback effectively, they can win and they can go toe-to-toe with any team in that manner. But when games become physical, overpowering, maybe a little bit too tough in the trenches, that's where Dallas might falter. And that's why I think they'll lose to the Eagles. But I do think they'll be able to move the ball through the air a bit against this tough Eagles defense because the Eagles will be working with new pass rushers and even new corners and safeties. So I think Dak should be able to take advantage of that. And at the same time, their defense is not very big. It's not very physical. So Saquon will give them problems. But they're pretty fast. And I do think they have great athletes, which means they'll make plays. They'll probably get some sacks on Jalen Hurts. And they'll be able to shut down, I feel, a bunch of explosive plays, okay? So I look at this game and I think the Eagles are going to have to wear them down. I could see the Cowboys even making it really close early, while the Eagles maybe pull away in the 4th. But against the Super Bowl champs in their home opener, it's difficult to win that game. It's one of the toughest games to win in the NFL. I think they lose, but I think it will be close. Week 2, I think Dallas gets their first win against the New York Giants. Simply put, I do respect the Giants' improvement this offseason, especially on defense, with names like Abdul Carter. They even stole Chauncey Golston from the Dallas Cowboys. They added Javon Holland at safety, and they added Paulson Adebo at corner, and they had a decent draft. But offensively, they have flaws on their offensive line, and they have a not great quarterback. Russell Wilson probably will be starting. This is the home opener in Dallas. Dallas is better at home because their speed translates in the dome and on the fast track. And I think Micah Parsons and their pass rush will have a field day against this offensive line of the Giants. And I think that will cause a lot of problems and pressure for Russell Wilson. So ultimately, the Giants' defense might give Dallas some issues on that side, but I think their defense makes more big plays, and that translates to a victory. Week 3, this is the game that I'm not sure about. Okay, so I'm going to leave that game to the end because the Bears in Chicago is definitely not easy. I'm a little uncertain about whether or not Chicago would be able to run the ball and overpower the Dallas Cowboys. The game would be in Chicago, but it's early in the year, so weather probably isn't going to be too prevalent here just yet in the schedule. I'm not sure how that would affect Dak or even Caleb Williams, to be honest, so I can't really play into that. But Ben Johnson definitely is a guy that could scheme up a way to move the ball against the Cowboys defense. And at the same time, the Bears defense is pretty solid, okay? Especially against the pass. So I do think the Bears are a difficult matchup, especially on the road, but there's a lot of unproven factors about the Bears that you could allow yourself to believe will allow the Cowboys early in the year to take advantage of. Okay, so I'll get back to that game. But next, we're going to talk about this stretch of games here, which is going to be very important in their schedule. So they play the Packers at home. I'm going to go with Green Bay because of the history of the matchup. A couple years ago in the playoffs, the Cowboys were much more talented than they are now. Green Bay is pretty similarly talented. Matt LaFleur just absolutely annihilated Dan Quinn on that day, and Jordan Love played the best game of his career so far. I don't expect quite that level of annihilation or domination or upset, but I do believe the Packers are the more talented team. I think that they are the better team in terms of their run game, their physicality, the offensive line, and I think the coaching will translate even with a new coaching staff. That being said, Eberflus will have more familiarity with LaFleur than Dan Quinn did because of his days in Chicago. So if anything translates to help Dallas against the Packers here, I think it probably is the Eberflus factor. But I think the Packers are just a tough matchup for the Cowboys because of their balance on offense, which keeps the Cowboys defense on their heels, okay? So let's go with week 5. This is one of those where a lot of people will pick the Cowboys, and that's totally fair. I totally understand it. But I'm actually picking the upset. First of all, I've seen them lose to bad Jets teams in the past in New York. But second of all, the Jets are kind of a weird matchup for Dallas where they're a bad team, but kind of a tough matchup because it's an outdoor team. It's a run-first team with Justin Fields, with Breece Hall, right? With Braylon Allen, right? That's his first name, Braylon, right? But the young kid at running back. They have an improved young offensive line. Defensively, they've got Sauce. They have Quincy Williams, a solid defense. And Aaron Glenn will have a whole month to work on his scheme, to implement that. They play a lot of sticky coverage in that scheme. And so you won't be feasting on a young staff quite to the degree of playing them in the first few weeks. And this might be a catch-you-by-surprise game where the Jets are able to control the clock, run the ball, out-physical and out-possess the Cowboys, and that makes them fall behind and therefore play right into the Jets' hands. So I think this is actually a really tough matchup, not a tough team, okay? So that's why I'm picking the Jets for a surprising upset, but the Cowboys will be favored in that game. I think they bounce back against the Panthers in Carolina because I just don't trust the Carolina defense to stop the Cowboys. I just don't. I like Bryce Young. I think their offense in Carolina will be sneaky good under Canales' play calling and design, and they do have a good offensive line, and Chuba Hubbard could give the Cowboys some issues in the run game, but personally, I don't think their receivers are great enough to really expose Dallas, and I do feel like Dallas will have a high-scoring victory. I think this will be a back and forth, but I think they'll go to Carolina and win, especially if they lose to the Jets. They're not losing both those games. Week 7, I think they actually beat Washington the first time they play them. I think Dallas matches up best in their division with the top 2 teams between the Eagles and the Commanders, definitely with the Commanders, because the Commanders on an offensive side of the ball don't really want to run the ball, and on the defensive side of the football, they're not great of a rushing the quarterback team, and they're not very physical, but they play a lot of man coverage. So I actually think Dallas is a good, like a really tough matchup for Washington because it's hard to play man against the Cowboys because they have CeeDee Lamb and they have George Pickens. At the same time, they've got a good decipher, rhythm quarterback in Dak Prescott, and they have a pass rush that's athletic and fast, and it can track down Jaden Daniels. So I think that this is actually a really tough game for the Commanders, even if you think the Commanders are better than Dallas. So I'm going to take Dallas here at home. Week 8, they play in Denver against the Broncos. I'm going to take the Broncos because I think the Broncos are better coached. And I think the Broncos' defense is the difference. I think ultimately they have enough in the secondary, Pat Surtain, to cover the Cowboy receivers. And I just think the Denver pass rush will ruin the day for Dak on this one. So I'm going to go with Denver here. Week 9, the Arizona Cardinals at Dallas. This is a game that's kind of given the Cowboys some fits in recent history. Kyler Murray has beaten the Cowboys, I think, twice now, or at least I remember one game where he was absolutely bonkers, but I'm going to go with Dallas. This is tough because you have the Jonathan Gannon factor here, but I think that the Cowboys can expose the Cardinals' weakness on defense, which is their lack of good cornerbacks. And at the same time, I don't know if the Cardinals' pass rush is quite that good. I think their defensive line is a lot better, but a lot of the guys they brought in are more run-first, run-defending players like Calais Campbell and Dalvin Tomlinson, for example. So I don't think that necessarily is a great matchup for Dallas. Plus, I think Dallas, again, just like Jaden, they have the athleticism defensively to track down Kyler and for him not to be a problem in his movement. So I have Dallas winning that game going into the bye. Then in week 11, I have them beating the Raiders on another Monday night, 2 consecutive Monday nights separated by a bye week. The Raiders might be able to run the ball on the Cowboys, and that's going to be difficult, and Chip Kelly will bring something different to the table. But I think Dallas is overall just the better team. I think they have the better secondary. I think they have the better receiving core. I think they have the slightly better quarterback, although it's pretty close. And I just think the Raiders have more flaws. So I'm going to take Dallas here in a dome where they'll be comfortable. I don't think it's too outrageous to suggest they'll be fine in Las Vegas. Week 12, they're going on a bit of a heater here. I think they're going to beat the Eagles. Now, they typically beat the Eagles once a year. I don't think they're going to get swept by the Eagles this year because I think after a Super Bowl victory, yes, the Eagles will be very good, but I don't think they're going to be indestructible. I think their roster has slightly declined this offseason, and I think in one of these games, Dak will outplay Jalen Hurts, and it will be that simple. I just think in one of these games, Dak will play better. He'll score. He'll be more on point. In Dallas, typically that's the case. And I think there will be a game where Saquon can't run all over Dallas and maybe the Eagles fall behind on the scoreboard and they have to throw the ball more, and that leads to some sacks, some turnovers. When Micah Parsons and the boys can get fast and they can get uphill and they can get to the quarterback, that's where Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland start to feast and start to turn the ball over. So I could see turnovers playing a factor. I could see Dak playing well as long as he's still healthy and winning this game. Week 13, this could be a game that Dallas wins against the Chiefs. This is going to be a big marquee game, but from what I've seen over my lifespan, they struggle on Thanksgiving. I'm going to take the Chiefs. This is also a tough opponent, obviously. Steve Spagnuolo schools one of the best defenses in football. He's a great defensive coordinator. Dallas, I don't think is quite good enough in the run game to take advantage of that facet. And I think the Chiefs will be all over the passing game, and they'll know how to defend the Cowboys by this point in the year. There's been plenty of tape at this point on the combination of Pickens and Lamb. Then offensively, it's Patrick Mahomes. I don't know, the Chiefs will try to run the ball, but I don't know if they're quite good enough in that facet. I feel like the Cowboys could ruin this game with a great pass rush because the Chiefs do have a suspect offensive line, but Andy Reid is such a great play caller that he can find a million different ways to gain short yardages, even if the Chiefs can't be explosive. So I think the Chiefs overall are just the better, more well-coached team with the better quarterback, and that's why I'll take Kansas City. Week 14, I'll take the Lions. I think the Lions are a really tough matchup for the Cowboys because they're just simply one of the most physical teams in the NFL. It's also in Detroit, and it's on a Thursday night, and it's going to be primetime based, so it's difficult. Detroit is a tough place to play. Once you get behind there, it's difficult to come back, but I could see a shootout. I definitely could see a shootout in this game where Dak and his receivers are really lighting up Detroit, especially if they're playing a ton of man and they're being overly aggressive and they're blitzing. I could see Dallas taking advantage of that, but at the same time, I feel like Detroit's just going to be able to possess the ball and pace the game because they're so physical on their offensive line. So I think Detroit will win. Week 15, the Vikings are interesting. I could see this game going either way. I'm leaning Dallas because I think if there's one weakness with the Vikings, first of all, they're not as good on the road as they are at home. Second of all, I believe that the Cowboys can get after that secondary of the Vikings. And if Flores, like the Lions, is a little too aggressive, I think Dak can make him pay because he is smart at the line of scrimmage. He can see things coming. And on the other side of the ball, I think this pass rush can make JJ uncomfortable. If the Vikings aren't quite able to run the ball that well, I think that plays right into the Cowboys' hands. Week 16, I'm going to go with the Chargers for similar reasons as I did with Detroit. I don't think the Chargers will be fazed by the Dallas atmosphere with Justin Herbert. I do feel like the Chargers are one of the more physical AFC teams. They're able to run the ball under Greg Roman's scheme. They've added to their offensive line with a name like Mekhi Becton to increase that athleticism and size. They added multiple running backs, Hampton and Harris, and they're a pretty physical team under Harbaugh. So I think ultimately Herbert beats Dak in Dallas. Week 17, I'm going to go Commanders to get their comeuppance and their revenge against the Cowboys. This one will probably be very close once again, but I don't see the Commanders losing both games to the Cowboys. It's pretty much as simple as that. Dan Quinn gets his revenge here. And then in week 18, I think Dallas finishes it off by sweeping the Giants because they'll probably really desperately need to win this game if they have any chance of making the playoffs. Because right now, I have them at 8-8-1. That's how even I see the Dallas Cowboys. Honestly, the problem for me with the Cowboys is they are just very unbalanced. Very good in the passing game, very poor in the running game. They project as one of the worst run teams and one of the better passing teams. And that makes for a difficult stretch of the season and difficult matchup-wise. At the same time, they play a lot of very good teams. This is a really tough schedule. Their division is very good. They play the Chiefs, they play the Vikings, they play the Chargers, they play the Cardinals, who aren't easy. They play the NFC North, period, right? And this is the final game here between the Bears and the Cowboys. I think I'm going to lean towards the Bears because it is in Chicago. I like Ben Johnson and his ability to scheme a running game, and I feel like in Chicago will be difficult for the Cowboys offense and Dak to navigate. But this could be a Matt Eberflus revenge game. In that case, it could be 9-8. So it depends on your perspective. But I have the Cowboys at 8-9, 9-8. If Dak gets injured again, maybe like 7-10, 6-11. But at best, I see them as like a 10-7, 11-6. But this is just too difficult of a schedule. So I think 8 through 10 wins is pretty much reasonable. And I could see a world where Dallas is actually a lot better than last year if they are as potent in the passing game, if their offensive line is a bit better than I expect, and if their run defense is a bit better than I expect, then they could definitely be a 10 or 11 win team. So those are my thoughts on the Cowboys. Hope you guys enjoyed this schedule breakdown. If you did, spike the like button. It really helps the video, and we'll see you in the next one. Check out the playlist, guys. It's Mitch. Peace.